pick up a couple of tension rods to make this easy, no-sew and no-holes unique window treatment. I'm measuring the distance between the two walls on both sides of the window. The width measurement plus about 1/2 inch seam allowance is getting transferred to the curtain panel, then cut along one side, leaving the other side sewed edge intact. I'm now measuring the length I'd like the valance to hang down, then cutting that to size as well. To prepare for hanging, the curtain panel is getting steam ironed on both sides. The top tab on one side is being cut back about 1/2 inch. One side of the curtain is being folded 1/2 inch and steam ironed so the fold holds its shape. The bottom of the curtain panel is also being measured and cut, then folded and ironed the same way. With the curtain panel laying good side down, I'm adding some hot glue to the folded areas so they will stay intact. If preferred, you can also use hemming tape, which glues the fabric together after ironing it. With curtain panel good side up, I'm choosing a grain sack stripe and antique sign from Funky Junk's old sign stencils to add to the panel. Then using a wider chip brush, I'm loading the brush, removing most paint, then using long swiping motions over the stencil to achieve a smooth, dry brushing effect with raw silk. I'm now positioning the antique sign on top of the stripe and stenciling it in ash. There's 3 ways to stencil. Tapping the brush up and down creates letters with the best coverage. Swiping the brush with longer strokes creates a smooth, dry brush finish. Or swirling the brush offers the most even coverage, which is generally my favorite choice. I'm now threading a rod through the tabs and installing the first rod up near the ceiling and against the wall. After placing the second rod, I'm draping the fabric over it. And my adorable mini awning or bistro style curtain valance is now complete. Isn't it cute? The tones and theme are perfect for the en-suites look.
I'm ready to check dinner off my list for the week thanks to HelloFresh. The past few weeks, we've been stuck in a rut when it comes to dinner, and I knew we needed something new and healthy to spice up our nights. HelloFresh makes it so easy to prioritize healthy home-cooked meals during our busy weeks with perfectly proportioned ingredients. And the step-by-step instructions make sure that we can even cook like professionals. And now, HelloFresh has a bigger and better menu, offering double the recipes each week with no extra cost. That means 2 times more healthy recipes with plenty of ways to customize your dishes, like doubling your veggies. Plus, the menu is always updating, meaning there's more seasonal recipes available right now. If you click the link below, you can claim 10 free meals, plus free breakfast for life while the offer lasts. Thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video and making dinner easy, fun, and delicious again. Now, back to the DIYs.
This room was just a giant blank builder grade space, so I knew I had to give it some personality. I removed the baseboards so it would be flush against the wall. I made the frames using 2x4s and used my Craig pocket hole jig, screwed the frame together. I attached the frame to the wall and built up the seat so it would be flush with the windowsill. I then covered the front with beadboard and cut MDF for the tops. And the window seat of my dreams? I have a pile of books to be read in there.
For today's project, I wanted to surprise my wife and get rid of this boring bathroom. I didn't want to go with the traditional curtain rod, so I wanted to go something different. Measured the window, grabbed a 1x6 piece of board that was 4 foot long, and started doing a little bit of sanding to it. Next step was to go ahead and put some stain on it. A lot of people use a brush when they do staining. I like to take a towel or a rag and just wipe it on there. Take all the dark spots and get it wiped on. Do every single side of the board. The next step was to put the hardware on the board that would hold it against the wall. Wanted to make sure that the board would be flat and not sticking out like normal hooks or hardware. So this hardware right here, you go ahead and mark it on the back of the board, and what we're going to do is drill it out. That allows the screws in the walls to go flat inside the board, and it holds it up steady. Once you get it drilled, go ahead and get rid of the sawdust and go ahead and install the hardware using the screw that comes with it. All it takes on a board like this is to put 2 at each end. Now, you want to see a good way on how to hang this up and make it level every time? Take a level, put a piece of tape across the top, lay it flat right where your hooks are, and then what you're going to do is measure and mark right at each hook. Once you do that, go ahead and take the level and set it aside, and we'll use it a little bit later. Next, we need to put our hooks up. Now, I went ahead with the black decorative hook, and I measure and mark equal distance between each hook by dividing the board. These marks right here are where you're going to put the hooks, and we want to make sure that we pre-drill each one of these holes. I'm a big fan of pre-drilling. It keeps the boards from splitting. So once you get those first holes pre-drilled, go ahead and put the hook up, use the screws provided because they're the same color as the hook, and go ahead and put it on. You're going to do this with each and every hole, and usually these hooks have 2 screws. Make sure you get both of these in. Now remember that level that we had? Put that up against the wall and mark where you marked on the tape. Then you're going to go ahead and put screws in the wall in those 2 sections. This is different though. You don't want the screw going flush against the wall. Make sure it sticks out a little bit. Then take the board and you're going to slip it inside the drill hole that you did right inside the hardware. The amazing thing about this is you're not going to see any screws that go through the board, and look how tight and secure that is. Check one more time for level. The next step is to grab some clip rings. That way there is no sewing or anything, it just clips right onto the curtain. Clip it on, both of them, depending on how you want it, and just hang it over your hook. Now, I went from boring bathroom to curtains that I put up, and then the last step is to go ahead and decorate the rest of the bathroom. Doesn't that look amazing? This took no time at all and it was easy to do.
So for this project, I chose a thicker cotton material, almost like I think it's cotton duck is what it's called. But anyway, I wanted something a little bit thicker that was going to block out more of the light because the particular window that I'm using this on, it gets a lot of sun. So I want to make sure that I really filter that light really well, and this material is going to give me just the shade that I need. So once you get your material, I always recommend doing a pre-wash of it. What it's going to do is lock in the color as well as pre-shrink it. So should you ever need to wash it again, it's not going to shrink up on you and then it won't fit on your project anymore. So after you get your material pre-washed, then you're going to want to make sure that you measure your window, the length and the width. When you measure your window, I always add about 2 inches for the width and 2.5 inches for the length. What this will do will allow for the seams, so when you're sewing it, it'll fit in nicely inside your window. The length is going to be a lot longer than the width, not only because the window is typically taller, but also will allow for you to make the pocket that you're going to need for the first tension rod. So once you get everything cut, you're going to go over to your ironing board and you're going to measure the first 1/2 inch for one of the sides. I'm going to start off by measuring the sides, and like I told you, it's 2 inches extra from the original measurement of the width of the window. So I'm going to fold over the material from the right side to the wrong side, and then I'm going to iron this 1/2 inch all the way down, making sure to check that the material is 1/2 inch. After you have measured and folded over and ironed that 1/2 inch, you're going to do it again. What this is going to do is it's going to encase that raw edge inside when you take it to your sewing machine. So again, you're just going to measure, and it should be 1/2 inch because that first piece that you measured over is 1/2 inch, so you're just going to fold it onto itself. Okay, now that you've gotten both sides of the material folded over and ironed, you're now ready to put it on your sewing machine. The sewing machine I'm using is nothing fancy. It's just a run-of-the-mill basic sewing machine, which I've used for thousands of projects. So you don't need anything super fancy for this project. By folding it over and ironing it, what it's doing is it's going to encase that raw edge inside, so it's a little bit more of a finished look. Personal preference, you could have just folded it over and ironed it and been done with it, but I personally like that raw edge to be inside, so it makes the back of the material look as good as the front, especially if it's going to be a curtain that can be observed from the outside of your house. So once you get it all ironed and ready to go, by doing this, it also eliminates the need for pins because the material is flat and it shouldn't shift on you. Now some material, if you choose to use it, may not be so easy to do that with, so it may require pins. If you are going to use pins as you are sewing, you want to make sure that you pull them out as you get to them so that you're not sewing on top of the pins. It reduces the breakage of your sewing machine needle as well as bending the pins. So it's a win-win for this one because I don't need the pins. So when I get this over here, I'm going to line it up so the material is actually on the 1/2 inch mark of the sewing machine. You can see the 1/2 inch because there are marks on the plate of the sewing machine, which are going to show you where to line up your material. And then you also want to make sure that based on where you're lining it up, that your needle is going to be able to catch all the material that you're sewing. So once you get it lined up, you're going to lower the foot down. With your hands, you're going to want to make sure that you keep them out of the way of the needle. So you're just going to guide the material through. And then once we get started, I'm going to do a couple stitches forward, and then I'm going to do a backward stitch on here with the push of a button. And what that's going to do is it's going to lock in the stitch so it won't come undone. Now don't forget that the material link is going to show you all the materials I'm using for this project, but I want to hear from you. Where do you think you're going to use this particular Roman shade project? Well, what room were you thinking about using? And as you can see, we're kind of getting close to the end here. And I'm using my foot pedal pretty steady. Not giving it a lot of gas. And when you get to the end, again, we're going to do that backward and forward to lock in the stitch. Raise this up a bit. And then on the side of my machine, it actually has a little tool to cut the thread. And then as you can see, there it is. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're worried about the material showing your stitch, you can always make sure you use a lighter color thread so that you're not showing if you get a little wavy. If otherwise, just embrace it and just know that you're learning this process. So now that we have everything sewn, we're going to move to the bottom seam, which is going to be the same exact process that we used for the side seams, where we're going to measure over a 1/2 inch and measure over a 1/2 inch more. Okay, now that we're done with the sides and the bottom, it's time to do the pocket for the top. I went ahead and I folded over a 1/2 inch and I ironed it just like I did all the other steps. Now the difference with this one is we're going to have to allow enough room for the rod to slide in. And it doesn't have to be, super big. It just needs to be big enough for it to get in. Now if the measurements are correct, this should be about 1 inch. Fold it over. And it is. So I want to make sure that, again, I fold this and I iron it for that inch allowance, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine and I'll sew it just right along the edge of this piece of material so that we can slide this part in. After you've inserted the tension rod into the pocket, you'll want to place it at the very top of the window and let it hang down. In front of the hanging material, you'll want to space out 3 additional tension rods so that these will act as the faux Roman shade. Starting with the top, pull the material so that it blouses over the top rod, and then continue down until you finish with the 3rd and last tension rod. Make sure that you adjust the material accordingly so that it looks even, and if you need to adjust the rods, you'll want to do so at this time. Over time, the puffiness of the material will settle down, so don't worry about it if it looks like it's sticking out too much.